Prince William didn't raise his voice when the photographs were placed in front of him. That was what frightened everyone. 6 images, 1 gold-embossed invitation, 42 names. But it was the tiny handwritten note in the bottom corner that made William push back his chair and ask the question nobody in that room wanted to answer. Who told Laura she could ignore the king's order? Silence. Not confusion, not surprise. Silence because someone knew. But before William could force the truth out of them, the door opened. Camilla walked in, took one look at the photographs, then said something that turned a private family disagreement into a direct challenge to the future king. My daughter did nothing wrong. William looked at her, then he slid the invitation across the table, then explained the crest. To understand why that 1 gold symbol caused panic inside the palace, you have to go back 36 hours to an email Laura Lopes was never supposed to ignore. It arrived shortly after 7 in the morning. The message was polite, almost painfully polite. A private art reception Laura had been planning could not take place inside the East Terrace rooms at Windsor. No royal insignia could appear on the invitations. No photographers could enter. No commercial sponsors could be associated with the residence. The instruction was final, not a suggestion, not a request for discussion. Final. Laura's office received it. The palace received confirmation that it had been opened, but nobody received a reply. That alone would have caused irritation. What happened next caused something much worse. 24 hours later, 2 delivery vans arrived at a Windsor service entrance carrying lighting rigs, champagne, display walls, floral arrangements, gift bags, but no ordinary visitor authorization. The paperwork described everything as a private family delivery for the Queen. That phrase changed the rules. Staff waved the first vehicle through. The second driver was stopped only because one of the boxes had split open. Inside were dozens of freshly printed invitations, cream card, raised lettering, gold edges. But directly above Laura's name sat a royal crown, the exact symbol she had been told not to use. Now ask yourself something. Why would someone print those invitations after receiving an order banning them? That was the question placed on William's desk at 8:17 the next morning. But there was another detail. The original invitation design had already been approved weeks earlier. It was elegant, private, completely harmless. No crown, no palace wording, no suggestion that the monarchy supported the event. The royal symbol had been added later after the warning. Someone had changed it deliberately. William examined the 2 versions side by side. Then he noticed 4 words that had also been added beneath Laura's name. By gracious royal permission. There was only one problem. No permission had been issued. Not by William, not by the Lord Chamberlain's office, not by the King's private secretary, but 42 influential guests had already been told otherwise. Collectors, gallery owners, wealthy patrons, 2 former ministers, several people whose names made palace officials sit straighter when they heard them. This wasn't a casual family gathering anymore. It looked official. Worse, it looked endorsed. William asked for the event to be stopped immediately. That should have ended it. It didn't, because Laura was already inside Windsor. She had entered through a private family access point shortly before 9, carrying a blue folder and accompanied by 3 people who were not on the approved guest list. A member of staff approached her in the corridor. He explained that the reception had been canceled. Laura reportedly didn't argue. She didn't shout. She simply opened the blue folder, removed a single sheet of paper, then said, "I have authority to continue." The staff member read it, then stepped aside. Wait, what authority? That question raced through Windsor faster than any formal message could. Within minutes, senior aides were calling one another, trying to work out who had signed the paper. Nobody could identify the signature, but the instruction at the bottom was clear. Please provide Mrs. Lopes with all reasonable assistance. It appeared to come from the Queen's household, not the King's. That distinction was small enough for the public to miss. Inside the palace, it was explosive. Camilla had her own staff, her own engagements, her own charitable work, but her household could not simply override an instruction issued in the King's name, especially inside a royal residence. William ordered the document brought to him. It never arrived. Someone removed it from Laura's folder before security could make a copy. Now, the problem wasn't just that an order had been ignored. Evidence had disappeared. That was when William stopped treating the situation as a misunderstanding. He requested access logs, security photographs, staff statements, every email connected to the event. Then he made one more demand. Nobody was to warn Camilla, but she found out anyway. Of course she did. By 10:30, the Queen had cancelled part of her private morning schedule and was traveling directly toward Windsor. William was told she wanted a family conversation. He replied that this was no longer a family matter. That sentence reached Camilla before she reached the castle. According to the fictional scenario, she arrived furious, but not for the reason William expected. She wasn't angry that the event had been stopped. She was angry that Laura had been questioned by palace staff. "My daughter is not a criminal," Camilla reportedly said. William's answer was colder. Then she should have no difficulty explaining the document. Camilla insisted there was no hidden document. William placed the security statement in front of her. A staff member had seen it. 2 assistants had discussed it. Laura had used it to pass through a restricted corridor, but now it had vanished. Camilla read the statement twice. Then she said the line that turned William's suspicion into fury. "Perhaps your staff misunderstood what they saw." Your staff, not palace staff, not the king's staff, your staff. William heard the separation immediately. So did everyone else. The future king leaned forward. "These people serve the crown." Camilla didn't move. "For now," she replied. 3 words. That was all it took. The temperature in the room changed. Because this was no longer about champagne, invitations, or a private art exhibition. It was about whose authority would survive the next reign. But the most dangerous part was still hidden inside Laura's guest list. One name had been added by hand: a property solicitor. Why would a solicitor be invited to a private art reception? William circled the name, then asked for a full background check. What came back 20 minutes later made him abandon the meeting and walk directly toward the rooms where the event had been planned. The solicitor specialized in trusts, charitable foundations, and the transfer of privately held collections. Suddenly, the art mattered. William entered the East Terrace room just as workers were removing the display walls. Laura was standing near the fireplace, speaking quietly with one of the organizers. On a table behind her sat 12 framed works that had not appeared on the event inventory. William walked past her. He checked the labels. 11 belonged to private lenders. The 12th carried no lender's name at all. Only 3 typed words: Private Royal Collection. That label should never have existed. The Royal Collection is not a private treasure chest to be borrowed for someone's event. Items are cataloged, handled, insured, and displayed under strict arrangements. But this picture wasn't even on the authorized movement list. So, how had it reached the room? Laura claimed she didn't know. The organizer claimed it had arrived with the Queen's deliveries. The Queen's household denied sending it. 3 answers, none of them matched. Then William looked behind the frame. A small paper tag had been attached to the back. Not a museum tag, a valuation tag. Someone wasn't preparing the picture for display. Someone was preparing to establish what it was worth. That was the moment William finally lost his composure. Not with shouting, something sharper. He ordered every door closed. Nobody left. Nobody removed a phone, folder, or scrap of paper until the object's ownership had been established. Laura stared at him. You can't detain people at a family event. William looked around the half-built exhibition. This stopped being a family event when someone put the crown on the invitation. But Laura had one more card to play. She said the picture didn't belong to the royal collection. She claimed it had been given privately to Camilla. Not loaned, given. William asked by whom. Laura hesitated. That hesitation told him the answer before she spoke. The King Charles. The entire confrontation had just shifted. If Charles had gifted the picture to Camilla, then Laura might have had every right to display it. But if he hadn't, somebody was using the king's name to seize control of royal property. There was only one way to know. Charles had to be asked. But Camilla didn't want him involved. She said the king had enough to manage. She said the picture was trivial. She said William was turning a family courtesy into a constitutional crisis. William ignored her. He sent a private message requesting Charles's immediate presence. Then something strange happened. Camilla stopped arguing. She looked at Laura. Laura looked toward the blue folder, the same folder that had contained the missing authorization. William saw it. He walked over, picked it up, then emptied the contents across the table. Guest biographies, invoices, seating plans, insurance documents, but no authorization. Then one folded paper slipped from the inner lining. It wasn't the document the staff member had described. It was something bigger. A draft proposal carrying the title, The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative. Read that again. Not one exhibition. Not one borrowed room. An initiative. The proposal outlined a program of private cultural events hosted at royal residences involving Camilla's relatives, selected sponsors, and invited patrons. Laura's Windsor reception was listed as the launch that palace staff believed was merely a family art event. The launch that had been formally stopped, the launch that continued anyway. Now William understood the crown on the invitation. It wasn't decoration, it was branding. Someone was trying to create an unofficial royal operation beside the official one, a second door into the monarchy. One that did not run through William, one that might become difficult to close once wealthy supporters, charitable partners, and influential guests became attached to it. If palace power struggles like this are why you're here, subscribe now, because what Charles brought into that room didn't protect Camilla. It exposed the one person William hadn't suspected. Charles arrived shortly after midday. No ceremony, no announcement. He walked in carrying a red dispatch box, saw the scattered documents, then looked directly at the picture on the wall. His face changed. He recognized it. But when William asked whether he had given it to Camilla, Charles answered with one word, no. Laura turned toward her mother. Camilla said nothing. Charles asked to see the valuation label. Then he asked who had moved the picture. Nobody answered. He opened the red box. Inside was a signed instruction dated 3 weeks earlier. The picture, along with several other privately held pieces, was to be placed in a protected family trust. The beneficiaries were William's 3 children, George, Charlotte, Louis. That was why the solicitor was there. That was why the valuation mattered. That was why the event had to happen before the trust documents were completed. Once the picture appeared publicly under Camilla's control, even for one evening, photographs and guest testimony could support the argument that it had already been treated as her private property. Not prove it, but create doubt. Enough testimony could support the argument that it had doubt for lawyers. Enough doubt for a dispute, enough doubt to delay the trust. William turned back toward Laura. Did you know? Laura said she had only been told the work belonged to her mother. William asked who told her. She wouldn't say. Charles didn't need her to. He looked at Camilla. The room went completely still. But here's the twist. Camilla denied planning any transfer. She said she believed Charles had promised her the picture years earlier. Not formally, but privately. Charles stared at her as if he were trying to remember a conversation that had just become a legal weapon. Then Camilla produced a note. Old paper. Charles's handwriting. A birthday message. At the bottom, beneath several affectionate lines, he had written, "One day the little landscape will be yours." There it was. A promise. But was it a gift? That single sentence had created the entire mess. Camilla believed it meant ownership. Charles believed it meant affection. Laura believed the matter had already been settled. William saw something more dangerous. A casual promise was being used to pull an asset away from a trust meant for his children. Now the story wasn't Laura ignoring palace orders. It was the palace trying to decide whether the king's private words could overrule his formal signature. Charles took the note. Then he did something Camilla wasn't prepared for. He placed it beside the trust instruction and asked the solicitor to read both. The solicitor's answer was brutal. The birthday message expressed intention, but it did not transfer ownership. The signed trust instruction did. The picture belonged with the trust. Laura's event had no authority to display it as Camilla's property. The legal question was over, but William still wanted to know who had authorized the reception after it was canceled. He returned to the missing document. Charles ordered it found. Every room was searched. Every printer log was checked. Every deleted email was restored. At 2:46 that afternoon, an aide discovered the source. The authorization had been printed from Camilla's private office, but Camilla hadn't signed it. Laura hadn't signed it. The signature belonged to one of Camilla's senior advisors. William demanded the advisor be brought in. The woman entered carrying no notes. She admitted drafting the proposal. She admitted adding the royal symbol. She admitted instructing the vans to use the Queen's delivery designation, but she claimed she had done it to protect Camilla from being slowly pushed out of palace life. That explanation stunned even Camilla. The advisor believed William's household was drawing a harder line between official royals and Camilla's private relatives. She saw Laura's initiative as a way to secure Camilla's family a permanent place before William eventually became king. Not titles, not public money, access, influence, a recognized position inside the royal machine. She believed she was defending the Queen, but she had used Laura to do it. That was the betrayal. Laura hadn't arrived at Windsor intending to steal royal property. She had been told the event was approved. She had been shown a document carrying a senior signature. She had been assured the picture belonged to her mother. But when the first cancellation arrived, she chose not to verify any of it. She ignored the warning because the version she had been given was the version she wanted to believe. William wasn't furious because she was Camilla's daughter. He was furious because her surname had been used like a key that opened gates, moved objects, silenced staff, turned private wishes into supposed royal commands. Charles dismissed the advisor immediately. The invitations were destroyed. The event was cancelled. The picture was removed under supervision and returned to secure storage. But Camilla still wasn't satisfied. She demanded that Laura receive a written apology for how she had been confronted. William refused. Charles tried to calm them. That made it worse. Camilla accused William of humiliating her family to establish control before the throne was even his. William replied that he was protecting the throne because Charles had failed to draw the boundary himself. Nobody spoke after that. Even William seemed shocked by the force of his own words. Charles closed his eyes because that was the accusation buried underneath everything. He had spent years trying to combine two families without ever forcing them to accept where private affection ended and royal authority began. Now, one ambiguous birthday promise had nearly dragged his grandchildren into a property dispute. One advisor had built an unofficial initiative in Camilla's name. One daughter had walked past a direct order because she believed family access outranked palace procedure. Charles had wanted peace. Instead, he had created uncertainty. But the final blow came after Laura had already left. William returned to the guest list. 42 names. 41 had been invited to the reception. One had not. The property solicitor's name had been written in by hand, but the handwriting didn't belong to Laura, Camilla, or the dismissed advisor. Charles recognized it. He had added the name himself. Weeks earlier, before the cancellation, before the invitations were changed, before anyone claimed he knew nothing about the initiative, William looked at him. Charles slowly sat down. The king had known about the planned reception. He had even suggested legal advice, but when the proposal became controversial, he allowed the palace to stop it without admitting his earlier involvement. Charles hadn't ordered anyone to seize the painting, but his silence had allowed everyone else to fight over what they thought he wanted. Camilla believed she had been betrayed. Laura believed she had been authorized. William believed the crown had been challenged, but all three had been reacting to a gap Charles refused to fill. William picked up the guest list and placed it in front of him. You could have prevented this. Charles didn't deny it. He looked toward the empty space on the wall where the picture had hung, then toward the destroyed invitations carrying the crown. Finally, he reached for a pen. He drew one line through the words, "The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative." Underneath, he wrote, "No private family member acts with royal authority." Then he signed it. Camilla read the sentence. Laura's name wasn't there, but it didn't need to be. Everyone knew who the boundary had been written for. William gathered the papers and walked toward the door. Behind him, Charles remained seated beside the birthday note that had promised too much, the formal order that had arrived too late, but the gold invitation that should never have existed. A king surrounded by signatures, yet almost destroyed by the words he never clearly said. So tell me this. Was William protecting the monarchy from a dangerous precedent, or did he use one mistake to shut Camilla's family out forever? Because that gold crown wasn't just printed on an invitation.